for Miguel.
If I can ask everyone, please have a seat. It is 3 o'clock and time for us to call this pre-agenda meeting to order. Roll call.
Blair,
Here.
Long, Wiles,
Here.
Hunt,
Here.
Rissler, Allen, Carroll.
Here.
Roll call is complete. So with that, we will move into our agenda meeting for July 2nd, 2024. First up, I believe, is Kevin Moore with an RDOT update with, I think, maybe some exciting news.
Mayor,
Are
can
you-
I go ahead and before he comes
Yeah,
up? 'Cause
absolutely.
me and you have had this news for a
Yes,
while.
I know, it's been hard to contain.
And I am wanting to share it with the public, and we'll do an announcement in the next, hopefully end of the day, the next, or tomorrow, once we get some press releases done.
Right.
But when we hired our grant writer, we, went big, and we put in for the RAISE grant. And we were awarded the RAISE grant for $11,556,363.
Yes.
So just great news. And again, I always tell staff, if we're not in the batter's box swinging, you never know, you get lucky, you hit something. But Hallie did a tremendous job. Not just that, just Kevin and Chris's staff and Christina and other people that got the information together and had that thought process of what we needed. And it will go all the way from Lincoln to the bridge and the total replacement of the bridge. So really excited about that. So great job, team. So.
Absolutely. I just have to say, it's an amazing thing that our city was awarded this on the first try, because we were told we pretty much had no chance. And yes, and I believe it speaks to what they see as the continued revitalization of our historic downtown area and bringing more people into our city because of that. And I see all kinds of publications about other cities that they are trying to do this and trying to find money to be able to do this. So I think we are extremely fortunate and extremely thankful. So,
We were one of 11 or one of 3 that were awarded in the state, and I got the original press release. I will make sure all the board members get that, where you can read that today. We were asked not to share this until it became official from Washington, which that happened today. And so, again, we'll share that. And again, just great work by the staff, and I'm really excited for the city and what this will bring. My understanding is no matching money. It's completely paid for, but we'll learn more as we go forward on what everything entails, and I will keep you updated.
Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kevin Moore, City Engineer. I'd like to start just by giving the board an update on the Interstate 412. So RDOT hosted a public meeting here a couple weeks ago at JBU and a meeting for city officials as well on the same day, where they went over some of their findings as they're wrapping up their linkages study. So the things that we do know at this point, we still don't know north or south, but we do know that we will be bypassed by the interstate. So they've ruled out any improvements to 412 as it goes through town for future interstate. So we'll be bypassed either to the north or south, and those studies will be funded in the future. So right now we do have the 2026 to 2028 draft funding plan, and this is not on that study. So we can expect maybe either they would amend that in, or it would be 2029 to 2031 when we would start seeing a line on a map. So once we do get a line on a map, then they'll approach the city to start preserving right-of-way in those locations. So they shared with the public 3 alternatives, and you have this on your map in front of you as well. So the solid shaded area is what was looked at in 2006 if it were to go north of town, and they've added, due to development, that other hatched area. So this actually goes all the way from Lawless Road to Lake Swepco, and it could be anywhere in that location if it goes to the north. An additional north route, the differences in these are how much of 412 and West Siloam they turn into interstate. So if they bypass that portion as well and go to the north, then we'll see a different route to the north than if they maintain the existing portion of 412. And then to the south, going around, this kind of goes south of kind of Elm Street where Mount Olive ends there, and about halfway to the city-owned kayak park. So anywhere in that area, they'd be looking at a strip of about 300 feet in width, but we don't know yet where that line will fall. So this is the map that's available on their website, and we'll post something just to give the public a link to this as well, and we'll also put it on our website tomorrow so that people can kind of zoom into the map and see if they live in these areas, just kind of where it could fall. And again, we don't know yet north or south. They've not ruled either of those options out, but we just know kind of the general area where that center line would be. So this is the northern portion of the map that you have in front of you that we created. So anywhere kind of in that area, again, from Lawless to Lake Swepco at the north. If it went north of here, we would expect it to probably go just north of our airport. And so kind of looking at that area closer to Bill Young Road, possibly. But again, we don't know what that would look like yet. And that'll be probably a few years out before they provide us with a line on the map. And then to the south, again, about halfway to the kayak park, kind of that DeVore Road area through there. And then just kind of with timing, we don't know a whole lot on the timing because a lot of it depends on when the next stage is funded. So RDOT, when you speak to them, they can tell you how long these different studies will take, but not when the studies will actually be funded. So that's kind of the hurry up and wait between each step that we're looking at right now. And so we would anticipate in the next few years kind of getting that line on a map. And then once the Federal Highway Administration decides to fund that interstate, then we'd be looking at a 25-year timeline to have it completed once they decide to fund it. And we won't know, unfortunately, a lot of unknowns, but we won't know if the Siloam bypass would be towards the beginning of that funding or towards the end. We just don't have that information at this point. But what we do have is we'll be posting to our website so people can start looking at that. Are
Sounds
there any
good.
questions that staff can answer?
For the update, appreciate that.
Thank you.
It looks like Jason?
Evening, Mayor, Board, Jason Davis, Public Service Director. I've got TPG and Olson, this is John and Matt. So to give you a little update, sorry, my screen's not doing anything. Kevin, how do you blow that up? All right, perfect. So, over the last few months, Ken and I have done a lot of research, did a lot of things looking at different places and what people have done. We sent out an RFQ. This is taking a long time for us to do our due diligence on this, I feel like. We visited Covana and Tulsa, looked at their facility. I've spoken with Steve Unger several times. We've spoken with Mayor of Tawnytown several times. Just trying to find a solution to the problem that we have. So this is Tawnytown landfill. This is just what we deal with. This is our trash. Class 1 landfill, it's MSW, it's municipal solid waste. So basically anything that goes in your trash can winds up in the Class 1 landfill. Everything gets thrown away and buried, plastic bottles, food scraps, newspaper, just typical what we deal with every day. There are three main reasons landfills are bad for the environment: toxins, leachate, and greenhouse gases. We have all of that kind of going through our systems and our streams, and especially in that area, the way the aqueduct system is set up, there's actually a bill that's being pushed through Arkansas legislation right now that will provide about $1 million to do funding to see how much trash juices and leachate is getting into the streams and what we're drinking and going through. So Steve Unger is pushing that really far, and it looks like he's got a lot of support. That'll take 2 years to get the findings on that, and this will be done by the University of Arkansas. We've talked before. My big thing for me is not just to bury the trash and forget about it. It's to find a solution. Mayor Russell has made it very clear that she does not want the landfill there. They will block any more expansions coming forward. They've made that very clear. So we have a small window to where we have to figure out what we're going to do for the future, for us and the area, if that's what we chose to do. We're looking anywhere from 10 to 15 years, that landfill being closed down. In the grand scheme of things, that's not that far away. The more the area grows, the faster that's going to happen. So we've reached out. We did an RFQ, spoke with several different companies, and TPG and Olson, these guys really know what they're doing. They've been a part of gasification centers and other things, and we felt like they had the most knowledge, and it's who we decided to go with. So I'm gonna let these guys kind of talk about what they do, and they'll go through some of their presentation here. There's a little left and right button there.
I don't know if you want to start with introducing yourself, and
Sure.
then I'll carry it forward.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Matt Lose, I'm head of Civil Development Group here in Fayetteville, actually, with Olson, and we would help with more of the site-specific issues themselves, and then we'd be working with TPG and our other teams to actually produce this facility, so.
Thanks, Matt. So, Council and Madam Mayor. Yeah, my name's John Reardon. I'll tell you briefly about myself. I started working in biomass gasification in around 2000, and one of the projects I had an opportunity to work on was poultry litter gasification. Interestingly, we worked with the University of Arkansas back in those days to see how we could use poultry litter as a fuel for brooder houses. Very challenging fuel, I'll say that. But over the years, I started a company called Frontline Bioenergy, and we built a plant in Chippewa Valley, at the Chippewa Valley Ethanol Company in 2008. And then since then, I've done a number of different things. We did a front-end engineering study in California for a biomass to hydrogen project that is working with the landfill to take green waste separated from other trash and use that as feedstock. And we've also had did some brief studies on what are the challenges of using tires as well. And so let me see, just tap that. Excuse me, wrong glasses. And let's see, so, thank you. Okay. So this was a project I worked on years ago with a company that I had started called Frontline Bioenergy, which is still operating, although I divested in 2010. But Frontline works with fluidized bed gasification technology, and we developed a simple gas cleanup system, basically using a cooler and filter, and through a residence time and putting some calcium compounds in the fluidized bed, it's able to absorb chlorine down to very low levels. So this is the project that was in 2008, it was around $25 million, roughly rated to about 75 tons per day for the feedstock, and had expansion potential up to 200 tons per day. Another project that, one of my team members who works for us, Patrick Bourne, he worked with the Abengoa and Abiensia on this Sparks Nevada project that is taking municipal solid waste and converting it into kerosene fuel, and that's called the Fulcrum Bioenergy Project. Fairly large-scale approximately 500 tons per day. And it's composed of gasification, gas conditioning, heat recovery steam generator, some wet scrubbers and some guard beds, and other things to reduce some of the other challenging compounds like carbonyl sulfide, hydrogen cyanide that are converted into more benign compounds before converting the gas into the kerosene. This is the project worked on recently with Power Engineers and Stellar J in Richmond, California, which was the technology developer had a steam reformer, and they needed some support building the balance of plant. So we supported the front-end engineering with Power Engineers to develop a biomass completely to hydrogen fuel cell grade, which means it has very, very low contaminants. So a lot of process technology went into, after you generate the gas, to then convert the sulfur compounds and any nitrogen compounds to clean up the gas very well, and then process it in a water gas shift system that produces then the fuel cell grade hydrogen after a pressure swing absorption. So some process technology involved to get to the pure hydrogen. And a big part of my company, right now we do a lot of work for Nestle Purina in pet care. This is not related to, but just in terms of large projects that we're working on. It's multi-million-dollar engineering contract with Nestle Purina. Nearly $1 billion in total installed costs for the projects that we're working on with them. We're supporting the engineering group directly in St. Louis on this. So this diagram is a simplified concept of what is envisioned. It's, as I understand, up to 1,000 tons per day or perhaps even more of feedstock that we gather from the surrounding region, not just from Siloam Springs, from the surrounding region, and go through a material recovery facility, which will separate the residues of things that are of low value, like glass, rocks, and other type of materials, from some plastics and things like that could be further upgraded. Some process technology can be applied to convert that into like a middle distillate, so like a diesel type fuel. And then the green waste can be used to then make green power through the different gasification options. So what we had proposed is to look at 3 configurations, and if there's additional configurations of interest, we can of course study those as we present the results. But essentially one would be an integrated gasifier power boiler where you do the integrated 2-stage combustion, gasification, combustion, power boiler. And then a separated where you do the gasification separate from gas cleanup and then combustion. So you essentially make the gas, clean it up, and then burn the gas over here, cleaned up gas to make power in a boiler. And then another one approach would be to take that front end part, make the clean gas, make the gas, clean it up, and then you can run into engines and you can do a combined cycle, so engines and the bottoming cycle, or just run the engines. So that gives you some options to consider. And then, kind of outside that scope, we could also evaluate the conversion of the syngas into things like methanol, which can be used as a green fuel for fueling large-scale ships and things like that. There's a lot of interest in the long term for that, but that's just another option that we could evaluate. But any questions on sort of the high-level concept?
Rectors? Mindy?
What are we being asked right now?
Do the presentation and then
Presentation for just the whole process of gasification? Okay, and a study is
study.
in the near future
It's a
as
phase 1
request?
study to look at the feasibility and cost of converting the waste that you could collect in this area because of a landfill that's nearing closure. An alternative would be to do a waste-to-energy type of project. So this is a study to evaluate the cost of that. And from a high level, for that much feedstock coming in, it really depends on how much is plastic and how much is rocks and dirt. But essentially, somewhere around 20 to 25 megawatts of green power could be generated, plus additional, diesel fuel and things like that from the plastic.
So if we get to the point where we ask you to do a proposal, there would obviously be a cost for proposal that, my understanding at some point is maybe based on a percentage of what the overall cost of the project would be?
Right, so at this point, because it's very high level, it's more evaluating options, presenting options. So we've estimated the cost of just simply that engineering efforts for that study. And then from that point, we can develop a preliminary high-level cost estimate and then an engineering proposal for a phase 2.
One of the things, Ms. Mindy, that our director, we wanted to do is make sure I brought people in that we have talked to, that we have spent time with, and give you updates of where we're at. One of the things that we have been looking at, Jason and I, just in the past couple months, is with the increase at the, in Tawnytown, at the waste site, just in garbage going up $3 and sludge going up almost, was it $15, $14, somewhere in there. We're looking at just the finish this year at anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 cost that's not budgeted. And then for the next 4 years, we're looking at anywhere from $350,000 to $400,000 more just in the extra costs on that 5-year contract. We also know that the site is, shelf life is what, Jason, 5 to 8 years, maybe 10, we hear. And again, this has become not just our problem, it's become a problem across the country. So we're trying to find alternatives. My recommendation, and again, we're not voting today. Today is all about just giving you as much information I can and continue to do that. But in the near future, the first step would be looking at doing a study where you can even get more information and know what we are looking at, knowing, do we want one small, do we want one medium, do we want one big, how much garbage do we want to put in the gasification a day? Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we really haven't touched a whole lot on, there's several options for the byproduct, okay? So the Fulcrum plant, I think, is doing like 11 million gallons of jet fuel is what they're creating out of trash, okay?
How much garbage are they burning a day to do that?
I think it's around 500 tons per day.
500 tons a day.
We're looking at 1,000.
If we were to do the region, again, that's what the study would entail, is to see what is the most cost-effective way for us to get a good ROI, right? Is it to take the whole region? Is it to worry about Siloam? Is it to worry about Benton County? That's,
So the study will look at whether anybody else in Benton County would even use it.
exactly. And I've had a lot of interest from outside haulers, just talking with them about this, and they're on board for several reasons. One, they can now tout that they are a zero waste facility, okay? So you have a lot of that. We have a couple businesses here in Siloam that want zero waste. So we have one that we actually take all the way to Tulsa and Covanta so they can get their zero waste. They get their energy credits, they get all the things that we don't get, but it's good for them, it's good for the other businesses.
Jason, if I remember right, wouldn't the cost be cheaper for them to bring their trash here than actually going to a site?
Oh, yeah.
So it would be a cost savings for them. And then the things that I've looked at is what it would create in revenue. And I've heard anywhere from $10 million to $30 million that this would generate in revenue. Am I accurate there?
Sure.
Front,
It could.
and, but are there grants for this sort of thing?
Well, once we figure out what we want to do, then we can start looking at other options for grants. But there's always grants for any kind of recycling. And what I'm wanting is have a MRF on the front end, a material recovery facility to get what we can out. And once we do that, we'll have basically the whole region that is wanting the regional MRF. I kind of go through this. So this is kind of what a MRF would look like on the front end.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mark.
first I want to apologize for being late.
That's fine.
I haven't had the chance to talk, and I knew, but I want to throw this out. In the 70s, they decided they were going to do something that was not this grand, but we were doing it. Are you familiar with?
Oh, yeah.
And they did the STEAM. It was for Allen's Cannon Company. And they also did, I can't remember exactly, they did something out in what we called previously the dump. And they did something out there as well, and I was not on the board, but I was aware of this. It was a dismal failure.
Sure.
It was not this kind of investment, but we did do something that was at least in the same vein as this. Can you tell me, again, I apologize for not having spoke with you before this meeting, tell me why that one was a failure and why this one won't be?
That was the 70s.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. Technology literally changes every day with this. Now you have optical sorts, where you didn't have optical sorts back in the day. You didn't have eddy currents back in the day. You didn't have any of that in the 70s. Those technologies continue to expand and grow every single year. Now you have an optical sort like what's on here that looks at all the material that comes through there and it picks it out real quick. I mean, it goes down the line and it'll actually shoot it out and put it where it needs to go. So the technology is constantly advancing. That's one thing that in the waste industry is a consistent. The way we recycle the materials, like the way that gets recycled is completely different than it was in the 70s. Before you had what they called dirty MRFs, where people actually had to hand sort and pick everything out. Well, now you're dealing with, people getting stuck by needles or cut or whatever. You don't have that anymore. Incineration is more what you're talking about there. Incineration's come a long way itself too. Now Covanta, for example, puts out enough emissions that is the same as your household propane grill, no more than that. So you're not getting the big smells, the big burns, the big fires and smoke like you did back in the day. That's all gone. So you have scrubbers now, you have the different filters that go into your stacks and the stocks. It's completely different than what it was back then. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know there are different products, whether it's jet fuel or slag or whatever. Will we, before building it, will we have to decide on what product we want, and that's the only product this will create?
no, no matter what, we'll be able to create electricity from any of it if we wanted to, right? So that's a big thing. You're talking 22 to 25 megawatts. That's, Phil, I don't know if you can say that's great or not. I'm not much on the megawatts. A third of what the city uses right now.
Okay.
So this one plant will also help with that and create another revenue stream for the electric side of it. So my thing is just trying to move forward, get this presentation to you guys and see if this is something you want us to pursue and if we could do a study on this and have these guys give us their recommendation on what would be a good ROI, because at the end of the day, the ROI is what we need to find out. What's going to be the best one for us? Is it jet fuel? Is it slag? Is it simply steam? Is it us taking our own trash and not the region, and how much we charge per ton, and the plastics and all that, the whole thing. Speaking with some of my people in the waste industry, they're willing to and wanting to bring all of their stuff to us, including their recycled material as well. So there's a charge for recycling that we would get off that. Covanta, the recycling facility next to them, I think it was $45 a ton is what they were charging for recycled material to be brought to them. So they weren't paying these guys, they were paying the facility to drop off their recycled material. So,
Jason, do our guests have any, you heard some questions. I don't know if you have any input there just from your experience that would help.
Let's see, so there's a number of questions, let me think. So in terms of technology, yeah, there's been a lot of advances in the gas cleanup and conditioning, that's a big part, and also the understanding of what causes an upset in a system. And I don't, without getting too technical, components in the what goes into the gasifier could cause it to get upset if it has alkali material. So we have ways to dose calcium compounds to absorb chlorines and things like that that might cause a low melting point and cause an upset. So and these things have been demonstrated at scale. There are a lot of larger demonstrations in Europe in that area, but I think it's going to be something that's going to be coming here in the U.S. a lot more, especially because once the landfill closes, there's 50 to 70 years of pulling out the landfill gas, and the quality of that gas is going, the volume and the quality of that gas is going down every year. So that becomes a long-term obligation for a landfill. So I think there's a lot of interest and potential in this technology going wide across the country, especially if people are looking at going to net zero carbon by 2050 or something like that. What you do with the trash, I think, will be a big part of that as well. If you're burying it in a landfill and making gas that is maybe useful to some degree, but has to be cleaned up as well. So this is just an alternative rather than putting it in the ground, making some value out of it. And as Jason mentioned, you can receive tipping fees for what comes in, plus you can make valuable products going out, which can be, we would look at the simplest version, which would be just making power. So it'd be, doing the processing up front, making clean power, and then, and then residues that could be some value you receive from that, aluminum, steel and things like that. And then plastics that can be processed in some known technology that will make like something equivalent to a diesel fuel, a middle distillate, which is additional revenue or could be used perhaps to, fuel city vehicles and things like that. So that's, are there any questions I didn't answer?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mindy?
I think I would like to see in some sort of proposal, whatever is recommended, examples of other cities that have done something like this, how successful they were, what kind of return they got on their investment, how much it cost to begin with. Because when you go out and, use the wonderful internet to search these you don't find a lot about this.
Right.
So while it's nice to be a pioneer of something, it's risky. And my understanding is we're talking about probably more money than the city's ever spent on anything.
So, and that's a great point. Like, let's say this one right here that they did, this was 25 million in 2008. This one was 200 million in, I can't see the year of that one, 2015. And you can see their production design rate is 29.3 million gallons a day, and that's in the diesel fuel side, or the jet fuel side of that, I believe. So they have actually done several of these facilities, and this is just a few of them that, well,
They being TPG.
yes.
Yeah, so it's individuals within my team that have worked for other companies who've done it. So the team that I've assembled includes people that have done work in the material recovery facilities, the robotics, robotic vision. And then Patrick Bourne worked on the Fulcrum Bioenergy Project. And my company that I owned back between 2005 and 2010 did fluidized bed gasification. And I personally built the Chippewa Valley ethanol plant biomass gasification system. So, have hands-on direct experience with it. So I do know the challenges, and it's very fair to say, yeah, there are technical risks for sure, and there's financial risks. So the way that we approach projects to reduce risk is through the process energy practice stage gate process. So I don't know if that's on here. Let me see.
John, I'm sorry, could you speak into the mic, please, because we
sure.
are recording.
Oh, sure, you bet. So this is an example, this chart right here is to illustrate what a stage gate process is. And the intention here is to give you a lot of information for the least amount of money up front through that first gate. And so that's what was being proposed is this phase one study that would give you just a high-level definition of what you would want to do. So presenting options and costs, a high-level cost estimate. We can classify costs according to the ACE classification system. So a class 5 cost estimate would be very high-level, and that was what we do for this. And then with more engineering, we could do more detail. Once you down select from the different options, so we can look at, right now it's 3 different options, and say these all will make power, and you'll have the ability to produce convert the plastic to like a diesel fuel as well. That could be all part of the project. Then you could say, evaluate the return on investment and which the risk profiles for those different parts, and say, well, let's not do the plastic, for example. Let's do something else with plastic. Maybe the return isn't there, just say, for example, but maybe it is. But then you could look at also the power and say, well, can we, there's other practicalities. Can you consume and integrate 20 megawatts into the grid? What are the technical challenges with that? And that's what Olson will be helping us evaluate. as well. So that phase one then gets you to essentially a very, like a rough order of magnitude cost estimate, and with a very minimal amount of engineering. And then you can go, once you're down selected to the more detailed concept, then you can go to a little bit more engineering, more refined cost estimate, having a much better understanding of what is actually going to be built to take you through a gate 2 or a gate 3, where you're looking at funding approval for the next stage. I do think there's opportunities that could be considered and could be discussed. It wasn't part of our proposal, but the idea of a public-private partnership where you have a private entity who helps cover some of the capital fundraising and capital risk with the city, but also opportunities to bring in grants to help buy down the capital risk as well. So those are all things that I would be more than willing to help the city to make it the most cost-effective and best economics for you.
There was a grant that we looked in when we first started looking at this project. We just didn't have enough time. You didn't have enough information. And so we backed away from that grant. So I feel there will be grant opportunities as we go forward. You hear a lot of the directors ask me questions and things like that, is you hear the good, but what are the pitfalls of this also? And that's where I think the study will bring that out. I've been in meetings, and it's an environment with a lot of trade secrets. They don't give you a lot of information. So I really appreciate you coming today and giving us some input and your thoughts. I really appreciate that.
And again, we've talked with several different, companies throughout this whole process, and by far, John and his team had more knowledge and have worked and been part of these projects. A lot of the engineering companies that we spoke with, yeah, we can do that, but they've never done anything. They're just going to look at a piece of paper and tell us what they think's right. These guys have actually had their boots on the ground, if you will.
Jason, do you have a ballpark figure of what the study would cost?
Yeah, I think it was $250,000 for this study.
And we were looking, before other companies, we were looking, and help me, Director Wiles, I think we were looking anywhere $5 to $6 million for a study. So this is cost-effective more than anything I've seen.
Absolutely.
What would be the timeline on a study like that?
I believe it was 12 to 15 weeks. I'm going off of my memory. It's been a little while since we submitted the proposal. If I remember right, if we had started in beginning of June or end of May, we would be done by around September, October. So it'll be bumped out a little bit, depending on when it starts. So, and we can, of course, expedite as well, working with you if that's of interest.
Is there any other question, board?
Questions, please. These guys are very knowledgeable. If you need to know something, ask
Madam
them.
Mayor,
Yes, Reed.
Jason, I do applaud the fact that we're looking at not just for Siloam Springs, but for those around us.
Yes, sir.
There's no need for us to build 3 of them if 2 of them could handle it around this area. And
Absolutely.
as long as we're working with our neighbors, I think that's a good idea.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And one of the things that we're looking at, Board, too, we're trying to find solutions like, I went by to visit with Jason's staff yesterday just to wrap my head around numbers. With these large increases that I talked about, we can't, you have a bank account and you pay your bills in this bank account, but you have a savings account. And right now we're pulling from savings to pay for the GRDA increases we're going to have this year and next year and the next 3 years after that. We're one of the only cities that I know that give our elderly community a discount in sanitation of 50 or almost half. Again, we have 1,400, I don't remember the exact number, 1,400 elderly on the half price. But again, when we do that, that's anywhere, what was the numbers, Jason? $43,000 we're not collecting. And then on top of that, we have this increase of at least $200,000 this year that none of us want to look and have to increase utilities, but that's where we're at. We can't continue to have $400,000 increases every year, and where do we pull that money from? So in the the projection, if we can get, if this is something the board wanted to look into and say we got something in 5 years from now, it would drastically decrease the cost. We could actually, instead of going up, we would go down because we would be bringing in that revenue. Our cost would be less, or the people bringing their garbage, instead of paying $36, I think we talked about would, $26 on top of that revenue. Am I accurate, Jason, or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
so, I mean, right now, they're looking at about $45, and I was thinking somewhere around 33, something like that. But again, I, without doing some kind of study, numbers are
Right.
numbers, but
Just our sludge cost, how much, Steve, do you know how much sludge a year that we're taking to the landfill? I thought it was like tons. Yes, but again, it's a very high number. I remember looking, that's $46 a ton every time we're taking in, $36 a ton for trash. So it's getting
Right.
very, very expensive.
the other side of that too is when the landfill closes, if we don't do something, we have to figure out where we're going to take our trash. And there's nothing close by. So that's something we have to consider, have to think about. And, I'm not trying to go all doom and gloom and this is terrible, but this is reality at the end of the day, unfortunately. And we need to think about something moving forward. If this isn't it, then I'm not sure what we do. But we do have to think of something for the future, so.
But Jason, what are the other cities doing?
They're scrambling, to be honest with you. I sat on the Benton County Solid Waste Board, and they're all worried. Everybody is. But nobody's pulling the trigger. Nobody's looking hard. They're all looking at somebody to do something that just nobody wants to step up. So I know Judge Mooring is between tires alone. Which that's a big increase, the way that they've got that set up this year. The state's not funding as much as they do normally. I think our budget for the Benton County Solid Waste Board, I think we're looking like another $110,000 that we're going to have to come up with to help suffice for the tires alone in Benton County. So there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of worry. There's just not a lot of solution, so.
Madam Mayor?
Betsy?
That was in part my question, and I know you communicate with everybody around. Yeah, do they have other solutions?
So they're, the big players that I've talked to, they right now have a contingency of taking it to Kansas and Oklahoma.
Okay.
Fort Smith doesn't want it. They can't handle it. You got Cherokee Nation, I mean, that's still out of state, that we'd have to travel. Covana was still out of state. So, yeah, it's just where we're at.
So then I assume, like when the study's done, all of that, that it will be discussed with Fayetteville, Bentonville, Rogers, the surrounding areas,
I've already been talking with those people.
so that we don't count those numbers in, and then later they're like, we're building our own, or we've decided to go elsewhere, or so that our figures are going to match when all is said and done.
Yes, ma'am. I've spoken with Fayetteville. They told me some stuff they'd like to not have on the record, but, we can speak later. But I've talked with Cards, talked with LRS a little bit. There's, even if we took 1,000 tons per day, that's still half of what the Tawnytown landfill takes in.
It sounds like something else is going to happen, even if we build one
So-
and
yeah,
we agree
somebody's
to
gotta do
take,
something. That's right.
that it's still not going to be enough for Northwest Arkansas.
Right. Like even Cards right now, they're taking theirs out of state. So, and it's a problem that we got to figure out. And we have a few years, but that, we all know that doesn't take long to go by. So, I don't know what the answer is. I'm hoping that the board will look into doing this kind of study and seeing what options are out there. And maybe that is incineration. Incineration has come a long way. Waste to energy is not what it was. An incinerator is nowhere near what it was in the 70s. And, you know, having worked for Fayetteville for 21 years, I know all about the incinerator that they were going to purchase and what they were going to do. And know that it's set over in Germany, and they never even got it back over to the States like they wanted to. But they jumped the gun. They didn't go to the board and ask for the money. They just went and bought it. So a little bit different back then. So
So would it, in the study, would it even be an option for Siloam to take all of Northwest Arkansas's trash? Would that be feasible? Are we talking about a $1 billion facility, or?
I don't know.
I mean, I assume these are all options that will be considered and looked at.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I'm going to speak with these guys about and work with them, you know, side by side to figure out exactly what makes the most sense for our community. Because at the end of the day, you know, as much as I care about the entire region, this is where I work, and this is what I need to take care of first, the citizens of Siloam. So, and if that means getting them cheaper electricity and a cheaper trash rate because we're taking in other people, then that's what my goal is.
That would be awesome.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Jason. Alan, did you have?
Jason, I know you've had a lot of conversations, a lot of people giving you verbal commitments. Have they talked about maybe even as we go forward, a possible MOU or commitment letters where the board does understand, all right, Roger's coming aboard, Benton. No one has said that. I'm just using names. I'm just throwing fictitious names out there.
So, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. They will not give us any kind of commitment until the board does some kind of commitment, is what they've told me. So, and that was not so much, well, I'll be honest with you, that was Fayetteville as well. Talking with some of those guys, they're definitely interested. The mayor has ordered them to look into what Siloam is looking at as far as gasification. So,
Do they consider a commitment from the board a commitment to do the study, or?
They just
Okay.
want to make sure that, you know,
That-
I don't have them sign something saying that they would do it, and then we don't do anything at all, so.
Okay, so a commitment to do the study would be enough for them
Yeah.
to get on
Maybe,
board.
Director, even as we go forward and get through this, if the study went, and just say we decided we want to do this, I think that would be a good time to get an MOU or commitment before we start building, where we know once we do this.
Oh, absolutely.
We know we have this trash coming to us, because we're looking at, you know, I heard you say 500 tons. Well, if our facility's 1,000, or we decide 600, just, because again, we would have to pay that note back. We want to make sure we know what revenue's coming in.
Right. So, I mean, Fayetteville does roughly 350 tons a day. Siloam does anywhere from 100 to 150 tons a day. Cards does about 360 a day. And that's just the, LRS is doing probably around the same, I'm assuming. And that's not counting your private haulers and your small mom and pa's and smaller towns even, so.
A day. You've told me 10 times, but I don't remember.
100 to 150 a day here. Fayetteville is 350 a day.
This facility you're talking about would deal with our issues with paint and tires. Just like the other day, I learned what a hot load was. Didn't know what a hot load was. Jason calls me and says, hey, we got a fire. You know, a lot of times if someone put lithium batteries or anything else there with the, I can't remember what was in there. It was some kind of insulation, started a fire. We had a pretty good fire. Luckily, it wasn't in the transfer station already. So,
Yep. And that's part of, you know, I mean, I didn't really, it happens. It's just part of it. You just stage it and do what you got to do. But a lot of alleviations would help with a facility like this, as far as that's concerned. But one thing that I want to make sure that everybody's aware of, and I want to stress this, is you're not going to see a big smoke bloom coming out of a stack. You're not going to have a lot of noise from a facility, and you're not going to have the emissions that you think you would have from this kind of facility. So sound, noise, smell, nothing more than what we already have in our existing facility.
And thank you for bringing that up, because I do think there could be a perception that something like this could be dangerous.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I think wherever we go with this, if we head down that road, we need to have some sort of education
Yes, ma'am.
available.
No, and you're right, because that is what we all remember or think or see when you think of like an incinerator. You think of this great big smoke plume coming out of a chimney, and it's not the case at all. When you do see stuff coming out of the chimney, it's steam. It's not smoke. So.
Well, and I appreciate Alan asking about the MOUs, because we have heard a lot about the talks that you've had.
Yes, ma'am.
And the interest there,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
we're not really hearing much specifics.
Yes.
And, I mean, just like you, we want what's in best interest of the citizens.
Absolutely.
But if we end up spending so much money that we're not getting any return on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
We're hurting the citizens in the long run.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right.
So.
And that's kind of what, my question is how much do we take in a day? I don't know, and that's what these guys would do, is to tell us, hey, I know you want to do 1,000, but let's keep it at 350, because this is what gives you your most bang for your buck. So,
And we would be picky on the people that come in, because we only could do so much trash, because with us doing 150 a day, if we're only doing 350 or 500,
right.
we would go there. And I think the study would really answer a lot of questions that I don't have for you and what Jason doesn't have for you.
That's
You're
correct.
hearing a lot of the questions that we have that can.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I mean, most of the stuff I can help you, answer. But as far as the best option, I can't answer that at the moment because I don't know. The only thing I know is we went up, and in 4 years, we'll go up again on our rates on the price per ton for the landfill. And it'll be even more because they'll have even less space. So,
The more we grow, in my opinion, the quicker the landfill's going to fill up.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
So what kind of land? I know it'll vary depending on the size, and I know at one point you had thought we had it there by sanitation or whatever, but then I heard it was going to take more than that. So,
Possibly. It really depends on how much we take in. I mean, some of the plans I've looked at haven't been that large, a couple of acres. So it just depends on the size of the plant that we go with. We found a couple of locations that we like if we were to decide to move, but we haven't talked with those owners of that property to see what they would want for it.
Right, because that's a great question, Director. That's things we've been talking about, 'cause we don't want it in the center of town. It'd be nice to be near railroad tracks, but again, would we want it outside the city? Would we want to look at some other property? But it's kind of hard to do that until we did a study to make sure this is something you guys even want to look into before we start looking at trying to buy land, if it's 4 acres, 5 acres, 2 acres.
Right.
Can you answer how many, if, just say we did because the way I understand this, we could build a facility that would do 500 tons of garbage, but we could build onto that as we grew, correct? Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, correct. In fact, that could be a strategy that we could present. So we could look at the economics. Let's say it was 150 or 200 tons a day just for the city here in Siloam Springs. And then incrementally, if you could add capacity, what would that? And that would be kind of smaller units, or do a little bit bigger units that are, say, 350 to 500 tons. And then if you were to add trains, unit trains, to expand capacity up to 1,000, what would that look like? And so we could quantify the capital costs and the economic return as well. So we'll look at how much money do you get in tipping fees, what is the revenue for, the sales of electricity or other products, and what does that net out in terms of return? And even, we didn't include it, but we'd happy to be able to support, pursuing grants and things like that. I do have a lot of experience pursuing grants in my career, but so we can look at what does that do, and then if you get a grant, what does that do to the economics? So you can quantify capital cost economics, return on investment for different options, as well as emissions. So because different strategies can, in fact, the whole burn or mass burn strategy is more challenging to do emission control because you're doing it all downstream. With the gasification, it's a strategy to have smaller units that clean up the gas before you burn it. So you're burning a cleaner gas in the end, and then simpler emission control on the downstream side. So those are the different things we can look at.
And I'm sorry, Director, I'm asking a lot of questions too, because I'm telling you, the meetings I've sat in, these guys are giving us more information than I've gotten for meetings that I've sat in. So let's just, the facility you talked about that was 200 million, what were they burning?
So the Fulcrum Bioenergy, they were taking separated waste, so there was upstream separation facility, and it was municipal solid waste, but they were separating out the combustible, the green waste, cardboard, wood, and paper and things like that. Basically, there was an upstream MRF, and they were getting 500 tons a day of, I'll call it green waste, so basically biomass, but it was from municipal solid waste, yeah.
But I want to ask that for the board too, because if we wanted to start smaller and see what the revenue is generated, we could always build on to our facility as we go forward, instead of just jumping all in until we get those answers, or that's the board's decision as we get you the study.
And just to make a comment in terms of reliability, so if you have two systems that are, half capacity, if one goes down for maintenance, you still have one facility that can continue running, because you were receiving the material all the time, so you want to make sure and address that reliability as well. So that is something that can be addressed.
So, you had mentioned the lithium, the fire, which they can decide to explode and catch on fire, and there is no way to put them out,
Yeah, it's not fun.
which, yeah, that sounds horrible. So are there things with this facility where there could be problems like that, where lithium batteries are catching on
So-
fire and affecting?
You're getting a different temperature on gasification. It's somewhere, I think, around 26,000 degrees or something.
It'd be around 14 or 1500 Fahrenheit, roughly, around, 800 or 900 Celsius, around there. But the idea of the material recovery facility is to separate out your lithium batteries and things like that. And there's probably other things that can be done strategically in how waste is collected, so, hopefully someone's not putting lithium batteries in the trash, but it does happen. We know anything, pretty much anything can come in. But one of the benefits of the robotic vision technology is it is shown, like, with humans, you can get maybe 70% or 75% efficiency. They showed they could get 95% efficiency in separating materials. And so you get green waste, which is, you're just talking like, tree trimmings and paper, cardboard, all that kind of things, the combustible green waste, biogenic sourced. And from the steel and aluminum and plastic. So separating that out, and if some comes in and it has lithium in it, it probably ought to go in a separate area as well. And you could have a fire safety systems to address the type of suppression you need for that type of, so if you end up getting batteries coming in, you say, okay, batteries go over here, you've got the right kind of fire suppression for that.
And, I'll also add that, in the sanitation department, the most difficult job to do there is curb sort recycle, right? By going to this type of facility and having that MRF on the front end, we could go with a commingle recycle and not have those guys out there in the heat and the weather and doing what they're doing. It would take what 2 to 3 drivers are doing, I'd have 1 driver do. So, and it'd be a job that they could retire from, recycling the way that we do it right now currently, and Fayetteville does it. With a curb sort, it's a 5-year job at most for most people. It's just hard to do. So for me, there's other reasons why this is appealing to me, is, keeping our employees' longevity and not getting hurt as well. So.
Anyone else have questions? If not, thank you very much, Jason. And gentlemen, thank you for being here very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So Alan, I will ask you, because obviously this is a presentation, not something that they're going to vote on now, but we kept talking about the study. So are you going to be bringing that to the board later, to asking them to approve that? Is that the plan?
I would love to give the board as much information they need, and when they're comfortable, there could be a recommendation made by the board. And if they get a second, we could do that amendment. I just want to make sure the board's comfortable with this, because this is their decision. My job's to give them, and staff is to give them as much information as possible to make a decision. But again, we really can't do anything until we do a study. And through everything we've looked at, I think this is one of the better decisions for our waste and garbage going forward. And Steve sent me a quick text, just where you know, we do around over 3,000 tons of sludge a year. So it's about $140,000 just to get rid of our waste. So any increases, so we usually pay about 99,000, so you're looking at, you know, $42,000 increase just in waste.
Sure. Okay.
So again, if the board wants me to bring that to them, I will, or they can make a recommendation. That when you're ready. And today, you know, this is discussion, we don't make votes, but give me
Right.
thoughts.
So I think that they are probably wanting more information from questions that they've asked and conversations that we've had here. I would say that anything that you could perhaps bring to them between now and our meeting, next meeting, then they would have an opportunity maybe to put that on there as either in your, yes,
Madam Mayor,
Mark,
my
yes.
understanding is that we can request something placed with 48 hours' notice on the agenda. May we place it on the agenda, whether we have a resolution or not? We can place it on the agenda for discussion, could we not?
Sure.
Yes, sir. And we have, you know, Miss Lisa's in Florida on vacation, and Mr. Allen's also on vacation. I just would like to give them an opportunity.
Oh, yeah, okay.
to-
We can wait,
To look
yeah.
at is my worry a little bit, is just to make sure all the board members have all the information to get back and be able to watch the recording and ask questions. Because today, you know as much as I do about this. This was a very good learning experience for me. And again, we will keep asking questions, but I think, as Jason said, without a study, this is about as far as we can go.
Okay.
Correct,
So
Jason?
with that in mind there, and you want to make sure that they have gotten the information and had time to discuss that with you or with Jason, I understand that. That's
Yes,
perfectly.
ma'am. So we
yeah.
could actually look at I will be out.
Right,
I'll be here
second
the
meeting.
second, but I will out, myself and Janae will be out the 15th. So again, I have full confidence in Christina could bring that, but she may say, no, wait till I get back. So
So we would
we'll
say
do that.
either.
I will, as we go forward, and I have my meetings with board members, and we'll have further discussion.
We'll say July 15th, or perhaps the first meeting in August after you have time to speak with the other
Yes, ma'am.
directors.
And we'll also have,
Okay.
hopefully have another pre-agenda meeting
Right.
before I'll be here for that, and we can
Right.
also talk about it again, and if you're comfortable at that time, we can place it on the agenda.
All right. I think that will work with everyone. I don't see anyone saying, no, we don't want to do that. So then that's what we will move forward with. So with that, then I guess the floor is yours, Alan.
Right, thank you, board, and again, thank you to our guests taking the time. I know you drove all the way from Kansas City. Thank you very, very much. If you'll look at your agendas, if you have them in front of you, the consent agenda, there's just a couple things on there. And again, I apologize, you know, the meeting is July 2nd. I know a lot of people go on vacation for that meeting, so we tried to keep the agenda as needed, what we needed on there. But again, there's not a lot of consent agenda. Do you have any questions there? If not, moving on to ordinances, you know, we'll be in our third reading on the rezoning city municipal code. Or we can just look down the ordinance on C, D, E if you want to take a moment to look at that. I think the only thing that we have on a first reading is I. First reading amending section 102-21 of City Municipal Code for rezoning from I-1 to P-D, 2200 of Highway 16. But if you have any questions, Chris and Kevin, or if you have any input, Chris, anything that jumps out to you that you may want to share with the board.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
I have a
Betsy.
question.
Yes.
And this is for Megan, and probably Ben and Kevin too, is this the land we talked about before, off of 16, where they want to put up a large number of affordable housing, townhomes or apartments?
It is that property. I was gonna give a presentation on it, if that's okay. Can I?
Yes, please, come on up.
Certainly.
One question I had about that also was, when we had discussed it before, it was said that there might not be a recommendation of staff because we don't have a lot of industrial zoning in the city.
That'll be covered in this presentation.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, let me just pull that up real quick. All right. So I have my talking points from Planning Commission, so I'll just run through this again with y'all. Oops. There we go. And here's the pen. Okay, so like you said, this is a rezoning request at the 2200 Highway 16. So they're requesting to rezone 5.96 acres from I-1 industrial to planned development, as well as to amend the housing density cap on the existing PD zone lot. So if you look at the general area map on your screen, it's kind of hard to see because I know it's a little far out. But a portion of this lot is already zoned planned development, and the southern portion of it is zoned industrial. So what they're asking to do is amend the previously approved planned development to the north of the property in order to add on to the southern portion and change up that layout a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead. So this is the future land use designation for the property. So like Director Blair said, the property is currently calling for industrial on the future land use designation. So they are requesting a future land use map amendment with this request. Staff is supportive of this map amendment as they have left out about 4 acres there. You can see where it kind of juts out like that. They're leaving 4 acres of industrial tucked back there, and that is a viable industrial lot that could be used in the future. They are providing access to that with this development, and so staff is supportive of that future land use map amendment. Moving forward, this is the concept plan, so I give you a colored concept and then just the kind of gray version of that so that you can kind of see everything that we're looking at. So previously, they were only doing it on this portion. Well, actually, the line is actually further down here, actually, now that I see it. So this portion up here was already approved for planned development. So the proposed rezoning area is really the southern portion down here. That's industrial. And so they're expanding out onto that southern portion. So this would allow for 4- and 6-plex multifamily residential units with planned amenities, including community gardens. Those are these little corner spaces shown here, as well as a playground area. They'll have walking trails all throughout the development, as well as a community building that will be in there to service this development. Again, the northern portion of this property was previously planned for a multifamily development. The previous PD ordinance capped the density of the development at 132 dwelling units with a density of 9.37 dwelling units per acre. However, that cap was only for the northern portion and did not consider the southern portion of the property. The applicant is now requesting to expand the development area to include the portion of Lot 2 as shown on this plan, and therefore is requesting to revise the previously imposed density cap for Lot 1. The newly proposed density for the development is approximately 7.4 dwelling units per acre, resulting in a total of 152 proposed dwelling units, which is an increase of 20 dwelling units from that previous proposal, but it is spread out over a larger area. In light of this increase in dwelling units, staff was not supportive of the increase in density. And so we requested that with this increase in density, they do a connection, a street connection from Quarter Road to Waukesha. Well, actually from Highway 16 to Waukesha. So it's a street extension of Quarter Road. So I'll go ahead and move forward to that. These are their standards, but I'll go through that, but I'll show you the street extension. So the street extension is that little yellow line there. So you see with this planned development, they'll be required to connect Waukesha to 16 to alleviate the additional 20 units that they're trying to add to the property. So with that street extension, staff is supportive of the increase in density. Actually, the density is not increasing, but the increase in dwelling units. So I'll go back to this slide here. So these are their proposed zoning standards. So you can see they're asking to vary from lot coverage. And with that, that's because we've asked them to take out 4 acres to remain as industrial. And so that kind of impacted their lot coverage, and that's why they're asking for 50% lot coverage now on this. And then the same thing with the change on the density there. But you can see that they're requiring larger lot areas than what is typically required underneath planned development. So there's a give there. And this is a survey of the property. So in the future, they would be required to do a lot consolidation and a property line adjustment to fix that industrial lot over here. So this line will end up being like straight, and it'll be like that. And then just going back to this plan so you can see the street extension. So staff is supportive of this request with no needed conditions, and I'm available for any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Megan. Directors? Yes, Mark.
Don't go away, please. So, new at this, there's a couple of questions I have about the streets. First of all, I'm going to comment that if we open that road up, Waukesha's maybe the worst street in town, and we've got some bad streets. I mean, it is in pretty poor shape. Does the city have any intention of building that up to any kind of level to take the additional traffic? Because you're going to have Highway 16 cutting through. You know, they don't tend to do that now. There are a few, I mean, we have some traffic that, I don't know the name of the road, but you go down further down into the valley on 16 and you come, people do that, but not an enormous amount. But you make this one open, they're going to turn there to get on a Highway 412 faster. So,
So I'll let our city engineer speak to street improvements.
okay, we'll get that. Nope, not done. How wide is the streets that you showed inside the development? How wide? And the reason I'm asking that, there are some developments that have occurred in this city where we make the streets so narrow and allow street parking that a fire truck literally can't go down the street if everybody's home parked in the street. And so I'd like to know what is our standard for PD on this, what is the minimum street width allowed inside the addition?
So I'll let city engineer speak to that as well, but I will say the street widths are not reviewed as part of the concept plan. That is reviewed as part of the development permit. And so if this rezoning was to be approved, we would move forward with a significant development in which we would review street widths and those items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin Moore, city engineer, just to address both those questions. So Megan's absolutely right. So the street widths, what we see now is just a concept. So what they come forward with will be loosely held to this, particularly things like building locations, density of the area, things like that. So we'll review the widths, and all those are internal streets. Those won't be public, but we'll review those widths as part of fire code and emergency access, things like that. And they'll be required to provide parking based off of the number of units that they have. And then that section of Quarter Road from,
Will street parking be available to them?
they're not streets, so I don't believe that would be, yeah, it's their interior drive lanes to access the parking. So that would be up to the property owner if they allowed or removed vehicles that parked outside of a parking stall. And then that section of Quarter Road between Lincoln Street and Waukesha is on our list of roads that need to be improved. I can't speak for certain where that would be, but if this connection were to be made, that would be elevated on that list.
Anyone else?
And if we have, I'm going to have Chris, because one of the things that I've tasked Chris and staff with is looking at some rezoning to make, I know we've got a lot of the smaller houses and we're looking to increase. So Chris, kind of give them an update where we're at. A lot of these that you're looking at are now, are already in the pipeline before we can do any zoning changes, but I'll let you kind of talk about that.
Sure. Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Chris Paxton, I'm the Community Development Director. Right now, we're looking at an option that would increase the lot size in R2. That would increase the lot size in an R2 zoning district. We're looking at this twofold. We also want to address our, not just changing the minimum lot size, but also address some of our senior housing needs. So we're looking at the possibility of bringing to the board with that amendment an accessory dwelling unit allowance that would allow them to incorporate the granny pads that would be in the back side of a house, that you would have additional possibilities of expanding units after development. So the board has expressed interest in larger lot sizes in the R2 zoning district, so that is something that we are trying to balance between the R2 and the R3 zoning district standard. What we don't want to do is expand it to the point where it's essentially a replica of the other option, but we also want to increase and meet the desire of the board, which is to have slightly larger lot sizes in these subdivisions. Of course, this specific subdivision that's on, or this specific development that's on your screen wouldn't fall into that category. This would just be in general in an R2 type zoning district. This would be your subdivisions that would have the smaller lots that would have the usually between 1,200 and 1,500 square foot homes on it. So just slightly larger lots. The other thing that we're looking at is increasing, taking another look at our street section that would be going through these subdivisions to determine whether or not we want some additional beautification in these areas. So we have less small houses that are squished together, and then the wide street in the front. We want to look at whether or not we have options to expand our standard street section for these type of developments to incorporate, for example, street trees and different options to make these neighborhoods look a little bit more dressed up after they're completed, and increase the quality of life of the people that move into those areas.
It's hard to give you a timeline. This is something we're working diligently with, trying to get done. I'll say, I don't want to say a month or two. We're working on it very hard. It's a process, so we'll continue there. Chris, we also got some good news this week I'd like to share with the board, because board members and I have conversations and, about the missing middle. Those houses we're looking for, those 1,800 to 2,100 square feet. Chris, kind of give them the news that we got this week.
So one of our existing developments that has already gone through the zoning process and already, I believe, has a preliminary plat, has changed their floor plans that'll be built within that subdivision that's already got the slightly larger lots, and they've upgraded their designs that'll incorporate 3-car garages and the larger pitched roofs. So it'll be a nicer subdivision that will meet some of the housing demands that we've identified a need for some of our industrial uses.
As we go forward, I can't speak for them, but I feel if these sell well, I think we could see more of these types of development if we go forward, because this is what we're chasing. Because I think that's what we're missing right now. So that's good news. I just wanted to share that with you. Is there any questions on that? I'm sorry. If not, is there any other questions about ordinances? We've already gone through second and third readings on that. If you see anything, staff will be happy to answer those questions. We also, Chris, is there anything on that resolution that anyone has or anything, any questions about? If you want to speak on that resolution briefly.
I would deflect to, is this your project, Ben? Yes, Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner.
Is, yeah. My notes up here, 1 second.
Just while he's looking that up, there was one issue with this that came forward at the Planning Commission. The engineer of record for this project had requested one of the conditions of approval be removed. It was a little bit of an interesting case where in this project, the engineer of record has an approved plan set. So when we have an approved plan set that gets stamped by a civil engineer for the project, the proper method of amending that is to submit a revision. So in this case, the revision was requested to be for the grading plan. So when you have the grading plan revision, the proper method is first to send that back to staff, and that staff would take a look at the revision request and make a determination whether or not staff recommended approval of the changes. The reason why we do this process, instead of just removing the condition of approval at the board meeting or at the planning commission meeting, is that these are based off of the approved plan set that's stamped by that civil engineer. Therefore, the developer builds to those standards. If the city were to say, for example, no, you don't have to build to the standard that is up on the approved plan set, then the board is ex facto saying you don't have to build to the signed set that's from that civil engineer. So there's a potential issue after the construction if there were any issues with that grading. Who would be responsible if that plan set did not get built as it was originally designed? I'm not saying it would happen with this, but what could happen is if there was a drainage issue, the individual owner could go forward and say, I have a drainage issue, and that engineer, and I won't say this specific case, but an engineer could say, the city allowed them to build it outside of my approved design. So we're not saying that you can't request a revision. We're saying that the proper method is to submit a revision to staff so we can make a determination whether or not we support that revision and then move forward with the appropriate process. It's not the appropriate process to request those at the Planning Commission to just drop off the condition and allow the developer to not build to this plan set that was signed by that civil engineer. And that was, in this case, that was explained pretty thoroughly to the engineer of record, but he chose not to submit a revision to our department. He chose to go to the Planning Commission and request that the condition of approval be removed. And the Planning Commission moved forward and did slightly amend our recommendation, and I will leave that up to Ben to discuss further.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. That's a very thorough explanation there, Madam Mayor. So yeah, this is a location out on Whispering Oaks final plat. It's out on Oak Crest Road. They're wanting to do 16 single-family lots on 5.33 acres. There were some minor changes from the corresponding preliminary plat, not related to the grading plan. It was actually related to the phasing. They split phase one to a smaller portion, and because of that, it had to go back to Planning Commission. As you recall, final plats that are identical to the preliminary plats don't have to go to Planning Commission. They just go straight to the board for review. But when there is a change, they have to go to Planning Commission first. So that did happen, and the commission voted to approve with the wording change on one of the conditions, which I'll cover in a second. So the conditions, the final conditions that were approved with this were recommended for approval by the Planning Commission was the applicant must file the plat within 45 days. That's a standard condition. 2-year maintenance bond prior to plat recordation. And then each lot must be graded to drain to match a approved grading plan before the building permit issuance. And that was reworded, and it would be, the correct wording is in your documentation as amended by the Planning Commission. And so we are recommending approval with those conditions. I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Madam Mayor.
Betsy?
So I need help clarifying. So you all recommended that something needed to be amended, and it went to Planning Commission, and they said, no, it didn't need to be amended. Is that accurate?
Kevin Moore, city engineer. To clarify, the applicant stated that they would not be doing the grading provided in the construction drawings, and so when we were told that, we made it a condition of approval. So the change at Planning Commission was, originally it was worded to say the approved grading plan, and we amended it to say unapproved grading plan, so that they would have the option to revise that. So we did comment during, during our review cycle, we did comment on it, and the engineer of record pointed us to the already approved construction plans and did not wish to revise it at that time.
So the part that's not going to get done is the grading and all of that. Am I understanding that?
That's what they're asking. So staff's recommendation is that we require that as a condition of approval, that the grading be done.
And it seems to me, since we have just a few drainage issues around town and new developments tend to just create them.
That's what we talked about today, because if we don't do this, we're getting back in the problems that we're trying to fix now.
Right. I mean, I'm sorry, but that doesn't even make sense. Yeah, sorry for,
Staff supports your comment.
pardon me?
Staff supports that comment.
Is there any other questions, again, on
Okay.
that? I just want to I want some clarity too. When I say missing middle, I'm not saying we don't have that. I've just Ben shared a book with me, and I'm reading some other things, and it's called Missing the Missing Middle. It's just things that I get from residents and from people outside the city looking to move here. They can't find that type of house. So I was really excited when, I think it's 46 homes, Chris, somewhere in there.
With this iteration, it's on phase one, it would be at least 45 homes, and it's likely to expand in future phases.
Okay. So I just wanted to clear, I'm not saying we don't have that, I'm excited that we're getting more, because that's what I feel we need.
And that's awesome. But I have an issue with the potential drainage issues.
Staying on
You,
top
that
of it.
doesn't really, that's just me commenting. You don't need to respond.
If there's no other questions about agenda, I just want to run some quick things by you before we close. One of the things I have community development working on, they should be here early June, and I've talked to staff, is one of the things about making sure that we're letting our citizens know what we're doing. So what we're doing is we're having door hangers made, so when we are doing work in areas, our website and a phone number will be on that we put on people's doors. We're working right next door. I'm not saying we're down the block, we're putting them all through the block, but if we're working close to someone's home, that we will put door hangers in the future, and at least they'll have a contact number to say, hey, what's going on, and no one told me. So I just want to, again, to let our citizens know what we're doing in the area. So that's an idea that we're working on. I've had some issues with Brightspeed this week. And we just had a meeting with Jay and staff, and I will possibly be issuing a stop order tomorrow, unless some things are cleared up pretty quick, which I don't think they will be. But again, we can have some online conversations. So if you do see that, until we get some things cleared up, I will, once Steve gets that prepared, I will be issuing a stop order for them until things are caught up. And just to be totally honest with you, some work has been done and they did not draw permits. So we will get that. And I think there's some bond issues also that we have to work through that we discovered. So and I talked to them today, they're going to try to get these things fixed. So, and then also you guys signed on July 5th of 2023, you went into a MOU with the Manna Center, of possible leasing. The Boys and Girl Club is no longer an option, and they want to build. So I have put a contract together, and I just want to keep you in the loop that we're going to be moving forward with this, and we can have conversations. But again, I think in the MOU, if you need a copy again, I'll be happy to share that with you. But it will be just on the price, it will be kind of comparable to what we're doing at the airport, because that's what's in the MOU. But it won't be per bill, it'd be not per building, but per square foot that they would be leasing from us. So I just want to let you know that I'm working on that. And I think my iPad died. Give me one second. The other thing, today or yesterday, it was Janae, I think yesterday we were served with a petition. It's got around approximately 700 signatures on it for the a petition to sell alcohol on Sundays. I met with Jay today just to see what the numbers are. We have some, we're going to try to verify signatures. Also, we've got to make sure it meets the guidelines of what it takes to put a petition in. If it does pass, I will be bringing a resolution to you, but we have some homework to do on it. So I just wanted to let you know we were served with that yesterday. And
Can I
Madam
just
Mayor?
ask you real quick on that resolution that you'll bring, is that a resolution for us to have it placed on the ballot in November? Is that correct?
That is correct,
Okay.
Mayor. That is correct. I should have been a little more clear. Right now, we're just trying to, we have a question, to be honest, at Benton County, just to make sure that a number was given. You had to have so many signatures. Jay and I aren't sure that's a correct number. We have to go back to the general election of how many people actually voted in the governor's race. And then it's 15% percentage off of the total voters. So I don't know if that number is 500, 600, 800. I'll have to get that number. And if there's not enough, we will let them know they need more signatures. If not, it will be put into a resolution to bring forward to put on a ballot. But I just want to let you know that's what's going on. Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to you. That's all I have. Staff, anything from you? Appreciate you
Yep.
being here today.
Okay. Directors, before I dismiss us, do you all have any questions or anything, comments you'd like to make at this time? If not, then our pre-agenda meeting is dismissed. We are adjourned. Thank you.